Hello and welcome to my forensics file presentation on my forensics file summary essay. The video that was chosen for me was Ties That Bind, and a brief overview of this video per se is I found it very interesting because it's not like a normal forensics file where it takes place in one city or one state or one crime scene even. This forensics file is special because it has multiple crime scenes in two different states, as I'm going to talk about later. And I think it's very interesting and very a lot of twists and turns, and I think it's a good forensics file is very interesting, very high detailed in some aspects of it. So I would love to share it with you. So let's get right into it. So to start with the crime scene, as I said before, there are going to be multiple crime scenes with multiple victims, unfortunately. And in this sense, it starts off with in Maine, Portland, Maine, with an 11-year-old boy named Ricky Stinson, who was found dead in a ravine. He was manually asphyxiated with bite marks. But police also added the fact that he wasn't sexually assaulted. And I think this is very important to note because sometimes children victims are found to be sexually assaulted, so this rules out some potential perpetrators, but there are more victims, and so the later 13-year-old Danny Joe would be found with similar bite marks, but he would also be found tied up. And this is also important for as I will get to later why this is important. So he was found dead in Nebraska. So this is two different areas where a normal forensics case would have mainly one crime scene. So after this incident, 12-year-old Christopher Walden would be kidnapped and later found in a forest, frozen with the same star pattern stabbings over him. So in the crime lab, there were photos taken of the boys to analyze the bite marks and the bitings and the stabs. And they also took hair samples of the boys, which we'll go into later. But they also took the rope that was used to tie Daniel Joe and they analyzed that. And they also called in a behavioral analyst, which I will get right into next. And so, with the behavioral analyst that they called from the FBI, he found that the suspect got a fix off of biting the children, but cutting it out because it denied police evidence that was crucial to finding him. And he also found that he probably watched or read detective novels, which is why he got the idea in general to cut out the bite marks. He what a But what a behavioral analyst is in fact is that it is someone who looks at the crime, looks at what's going on, what the motive is, what everything from these series of crimes is happening to get a motive and to get something that the killer is doing in common to see whether he's an organized killer or disorganized killer. An organized killer would be someone who brings a weapon to the crime knowing he's going to kill someone, who has things to restrain the victim like rope, who also is very tactical in disposing of the body. They also happen to be very intelligent or very just high above average intelligence in general. A disorganized killer would not be any of these by chance. They would be they would not have any preparation and how they're going to kill. It would be like they would possibly have the weapon with them, but they would but they would not have the area to dispose the body of. They would not have rope or any type of thing restraint to restrain the victim. But about this that I found was he's a middleman. He's a mix of both, but I feel like he personally leans to the disorganized side. as the slide says, he's immature at disposing of the bodies. So that would make him just very disorganized, very wishy-washy in the fact that he's able to be found. But the part that does make him very organized is how he's hiding evidence, how he's cutting out evidence with those bite marks, and how he is restraining the victims. That is very organized. So for me, I feel like he's a mix of both organized but heavy on the disorganized. And as the binding is on my mind, we're going to lead into my next segue, which is going to be the fiber analysis. And for the fiber analysis, they're going to be analyzing the rope that was used to bind these victims, like Danny Joe. And so, with the rope that they took, they saw and they counted, and on the outside, it was a white nylon with 24 different types of fibers. But when they looked on the inside, it was 106 different colors. Now, this is very special type of rope because no one in the video have seen this type of rope before. They didn't know what to think of this before. So they had trouble finding the manufacturer. They had trouble finding who could possibly have this rope. And what I would talk about later was the hair. The hair was brown hair, which will be later talked about when I go over the suspects, was found on one of the suspects, and it happened to be the same hair that matched Danny Joe. And speaking of the suspects, there were two suspects that I would like to talk about. The first one being right after Ricky Stetson's death. Police had a suspect in mind, Joseph Anderson, a 24-year-old white male who was originally suspected of murdering a 9-year-old girl. But he was also suspected of being the Oakdale slasher because a 9-year-old boy named Michael Whitham was walking in when a white male slashed his neck, and he made it out alive, but he got a look at the killer, or soon-to-be killer, where he saw a white male, late 20s, late teens, early 20s, and police ran with it and saw that Joseph Anderson saw a 9-year-old girl murdered and was suspected of it, and so they decided that this could be the killer. But later evidence showed that this was not true. And so something that isn't covered on the slide that I will talk about is how the next suspect was found because he was saw in a public kidnapping Christopher Walden by a lady. And when police asked the lady, she didn't remember if she saw him or not. So the special thing about this case was that they used hypnosis to hypnotize this lady, and she was frightened when she remembered that she saw him. And so police were able to identify John Joubert, who was a maintenance mechanic but also a scout leader. And the important thing about him being a scout leader was police said that if he is doing all this and attacking kids, he would most likely want to be in something involved with children so he'd be easier targeted. And it would make more sense to be a scout leader. So that makes sense why he is a scout leader. And at the time of Ricky Stetson's death, he was in Maine, but he was also found to have brown hair, a knife, tape, and the same rope that was on Danny Joe. So he was found and pled guilty, and he admitted to being the Oakdale slasher, and he was sentenced to life in Maine and death in Nebraska. To close this out, I'm going to summarize this super briefly, and then I'm going to let you go. Basically, a young boy was murdered in Maine and found with bite marks with a star pattern. Police later found multiple boys in Nebraska with the same pattern, and after a woman saw the man that stole a kid off the street, she undergone hypnosis, and he was later identified to be John Joubert, and he would be found guilty and sentenced to life and death in prison. Thank you so much for listening to my video, and I hope you have a great rest of your semester.